There is a lake in East Africa. You can see it from satellite images. It looks almost beautiful, pale pink, glowing, almost peaceful. But on its shoreline, there are birds. Dozens of them, standing completely still, wings half open, frozen mid-step, like someone hit pause on the world. They are not sleeping. They are not resting. They are stone, perfectly preserved, perfectly posed, like statues placed there by human hands. But no human put them there. A wildlife photographer named Nick Brandt first captured these images in 2013. He didn't edit them. He didn't stage them. He simply found them, frozen on the banks of a lake that most people had never heard of. The lake is called Lake Natron, and what it does to living creatures is unlike anything else on Earth. Scientists have studied it, geologists have tested it, and yet, even today, the full picture is still being pieced together. Because this isn't just about one dead bird on one strange morning. This is about a lake that has been quietly doing this for thousands of years, and almost no one noticed, until now. Lake Natron sits in northern Tanzania, near the border of Kenya. Most people drive past that region without stopping. There's nothing obvious to see. No famous park, no tourist signs, just flat land, volcanic rock, and heat. But if you get close enough to the lake, close enough to smell it, you understand immediately that something is wrong. The water is not blue. It's not even clear. It's a deep, burning red, almost the color of old blood. And the smell hits you before the sight does. Sharp, chemical, like something industrial. But there's no factory for hundreds of miles. The temperature of the water near the surface can reach 60 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to cause serious burns on human skin within minutes. Nick Brandt, the wildlife photographer, arrived there in 2013 for a project on vanishing ecosystems. He had photographed lions, elephants, endangered species across the continent. But nothing prepared him for what he found on the shoreline of Lake Natron. Animals, calcified. A fish eagle with its wings stretched wide, locked in place, coated in a white mineral crust. A bat hanging in a pose it would never have chosen in life. Flamingos, dozens of them, standing upright, preserved so perfectly they looked sculpted by an artist. Brandt carefully repositioned some of the smaller bodies for his photos. He said later that it felt deeply unsettling, like touching something that wasn't meant to be touched. He published the images, and the world reacted with one question: how? But the more important question, the one scientists were quietly asking, was something else entirely. Why were so many animals coming here in the first place? To understand what Lake Natron does, you first have to understand what Lake Natron is. It is not a normal lake. It is a soda lake, formed over thousands of years by volcanic activity beneath the East African Rift Valley. The ground underneath constantly leaks sodium carbonate and other minerals into the water, the same chemical, historically, that ancient Egyptians used to preserve mummies. Let that sink in for a moment. The lake is, by its very nature, a preservation system, a natural embalming fluid, sitting open in the middle of the African savanna. The pH of the water sits between 10 and 10.5, almost as alkaline as pure ammonia. If you dipped your hand in and held it there, the skin would begin to break down within minutes. And yet, every year, roughly 2 million flamingos descend on this lake. 2 million. They breed here, they feed here, they raise their young here. It is one of the largest flamingo breeding grounds on the entire planet. And scientists were baffled by this for years, because the lake should be hostile to almost every form of life. But flamingos don't just survive here, they thrive. Their skin is thick enough, their legs adapted enough. They feed on a specific algae, spirulina, that grows in the alkaline water and gives the lake that dark red color. The flamingos turn pink from eating it. The lake literally colors the birds that live on it. But here is the part that no researcher expected. The same lake that sustains 2 million flamingos also kills them. Not occasionally, regularly. And the bodies pile up on the shoreline in a way that no one had properly documented until a geologist arrived in 2007 and found something in the sediment that changed everything. His name was David Harper, a geologist working with a small research team studying volcanic sediment layers across the East African Rift. He wasn't there for the lake specifically. He was there for the rock. But when his team started drilling core samples near the shoreline, they found something no one had put in any report before. Layers of calcified animals, not just on the surface, deep in the sediment. Flamingos, eagles, small mammals, preserved so completely that feather structure was still visible under a microscope. Some of the samples dated back over 4,000 years. This lake had been doing this, quietly, continuously, since before recorded history, and not a single major scientific paper had focused on it. Harper described the feeling in his field notes as deeply disorienting, because the preservation wasn't random. It followed a pattern. Animals that died near the northern shore were almost perfectly intact. Animals closer to the center of the lake were dissolving, eaten by the alkalinity. The northern shallows were acting like a natural casting mold. Mineral-rich water would wash over a body, then recede, then wash over again, each cycle depositing another thin layer of sodium carbonate, building up over days, weeks, months, until the animal was sealed inside, like an insect in amber, but made of stone. Harper's team brought several specimens back to Nairobi for analysis. And that's when the real question surfaced. Some of the animals, the ones found in specific zones along the northern bank, showed no signs of drowning. No water in the lungs, no trauma. They simply stopped, mid-movement, and nobody could explain what killed them before the lake could preserve them. The Nairobi lab results came back 6 weeks later. Harper read through them twice. Then he called his colleague at the University of Dar es Salaam, because what the analysis showed didn't make immediate sense. The animals that died without drowning, without trauma, had one thing in common: extremely high sodium levels in their brain tissue, not from the water soaking in after death, from before. The sodium was inside the cells, which meant these animals had ingested it, over time, slowly. The theory that emerged was uncomfortable in its simplicity. The flamingos that lived on the lake for extended periods, feeding daily on the alkaline-rich algae, were gradually accumulating sodium carbonate in their systems. Most birds cycled in and out fast enough to avoid it, but some stayed too long, and the buildup reached a point where neurological function began to fail. Disorientation first, then loss of coordination. Then they simply stopped, mid-step, mid-flight, and collapsed on the shoreline. The lake didn't just preserve them after death. In some cases, the lake caused the death, and then immediately began the preservation process. It was a closed system, a perfect, terrible loop. Harper published a preliminary report in 2009. It received almost no mainstream coverage. A small geological journal, a footnote in a larger paper on the Rift Valley ecosystem. The world wasn't paying attention yet, but one person was. A wildlife biologist named James Osei had been monitoring flamingo populations in the region for nearly a decade. He had noticed something in the migration data that Harper's report didn't mention. Something that suggested the lake wasn't just affecting the animals that lived on it. It was pulling them in, from further away than anyone had tracked before. James Osei had spent 9 years tagging flamingos across East Africa. GPS trackers, wing bands, migration logs. Thousands of data points collected across Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. And when he overlaid his migration maps with the lake's shoreline, a pattern emerged that stopped him cold. Flamingos were not stumbling onto Lake Natron by accident. They were being drawn to it. Birds that had never visited the lake before, birds tagged hundreds of kilometers away, were changing their routes, abandoning established feeding grounds, flying directly toward Natron, as if something was calling them. Osei cross-referenced the data with seasonal wind patterns, algae bloom cycles, and mineral readings from the lake's surface. And he found it. In dry seasons, when the lake level drops, the sodium carbonate concentration spikes, and as it evaporates, it releases microscopic aerosol particles into the air, carried by wind across a radius of over 200 kilometers. Those particles land on water sources, on feeding grounds, on the feathers of birds that have never been anywhere near the lake. And when those birds preen, cleaning themselves the way birds do, they ingest trace amounts, enough over time to begin the same neurological drift. The lake was not waiting for animals to arrive. It was reaching out for them. Osei submitted his findings to 2 major conservation bodies in 2011. Both acknowledged the data. Neither funded further research. Lake Natron today remains one of the least studied large lakes on the African continent. The flamingos still come. Every year, 2 million strong. The shoreline still collects its statues, and somewhere in the sediment beneath the water, there are layers of creatures that walked this earth thousands of years ago, still perfectly preserved, still waiting to be found. Some places on this planet do not need legends to be terrifying. They just need to be real. And this one is. If this story made you think, made you look at the natural world differently, subscribe to this channel. We find the stories that are true, documented, and somehow more unsettling than anything fiction could invent.